in my first term. It was the strongest market ever, the best economy ever. And I think I think this blows it away. But this is something that people have wanted to do, presidents have wanted to do for a long time. A lot of them didn't understand it. It wasn't a priority for them. But foreign countries understood it very well. And they've really ripped us off at levels that nobody's seen before. But that's not going to happen.
Mr. President, is this for today or on April 2nd, the auto tariffs?
Say it?
Do these auto tariffs go into effect today or on April 2nd?
They go into effect on April 2nd. We're signing today. It goes into effect April 2nd. We start collecting on April 3rd.
Mr. President, any more sectoral tariffs that are coming in on April 2nd?
What does that mean?
Any more tariffs on any other sectors on April 2nd, for example, chips or pharmaceuticals?
Not then, but we will be putting a tariff on lumber. We, as you know, have a tariff already on steel and on aluminum of 25%, and we're taking in tremendous amounts of dollars. More importantly, our steel factories and aluminum factories are roaring. They're starting to roar. They're building new ones. I just heard from Nucor, which is a big company, a very big steel company, and they're building a massive plant for steel that they wouldn't build without this. So you're going to see things that are going to be actually amazing. And I think you already have. You know, we've had some news conferences where I can't have enough. They want to do news conferences where they announce they're going to spend 20, 30, 40 billion dollars. But Apple, as an example, is spending $500 billion. Okay. Any other?
On the Signal chat, Senator Roger Wicker.
Hold on one second.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Reciprocal tariffs next week. Will those be immediately effective April 2nd on all countries, or will you focus on the worst offenders?
No, we're going to make it all countries, and we're going to make it very lenient. I think people are going to be very surprised. It'll be, in many cases, less than the tariff that they've been charging us for decades. So I think people are going to be very, very surprised.
Why is
on
that?
these auto tariffs,
I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. I don't know. I think we're trying to keep it somewhat conservative.
and on these auto tariffs, we saw obviously the NASDAQ 100 go down 2% at close, S&P 500 down 1%. What are you concerned
Is that
about
today?
that market reaction?
Today?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I want to see the jobs. I want to see that'll all take care of itself. That could take care of itself in 1 day, 2 days, or 1 week.
Are there any conditions under which you'd remove these auto tariffs, sir, or is this permanent for the rest of your term in office?
Oh, this is permanent. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Are you on the auto tariffs? Did Elon Musk advise you at all on these auto tariffs?
No, because he may have a conflict, so we don't talk. I've never talked to him. Elon's amazing. He's never asked me for a favor in business whatsoever. I'm actually a little surprised by it. I might do it, I might not do it. I do what's right, and he'd want me to do what's right. No, he's a patriot. He has never, you know, these are big deals we're talking about. This is probably nothing like this. And I've never had Elon come and say, would you do me a favor with the mandate or the electric mandate or anything. He's never asked me for anything.
Sir, also, what's your response to Republican lawmakers who have said today that your administration should take more accountability and not downplay what's happened with Signal that we've seen in these messages today?
Well, I don't know about downplaying. The press upplays it. I think it's all a witch hunt, that's all. I think it's a witch hunt. I wasn't involved with it. I wasn't there, but I can tell you the result is unbelievable because the Houthis are looking to do something. They want to know, how do we stop? Can we have peace? The Houthis want peace because they're getting the hell knocked out of them. It's been very, very strong. The Houthis are dying for peace. They don't want this. And they're bad. Look, they were knocking ships out of the ocean. You know, we had in the Suez Canal, they only have about 20% of the ships going through. They have to go through a different way, which takes weeks of travel. And that really affects commerce. But the Houthis have been hit hard, and they want to negotiate peace. But I don't think they're quite ready.
Classified that was shared?
Say it?
Do you still believe nothing classified was shared?
Well, that's what I've heard. I don't know. I'm not sure. You'll have to ask the various people involved. I really don't know. I can only tell you this. You know, you don't want to talk about it. The Houthis have been horrible to the world. What they've done, killed a lot of people, and knocked down a lot of ships and planes and anything else. You know, it's not just the ships. And they have been hit. They have been hit harder than they've ever been hit. And they want us to stop so badly. And they've got to stop. They've got to say no mas. But I can only say that the attacks, it's attacks every day, every night. It's not just the one, you're talking about one. The attacks have been very successful, even beyond our wildest expectations. We've hit them very hard, very successfly. And we're going to do it for a long time. We're going to keep it going for a long time.
Senate Republicans have said that they have formally asked the administration for an Inspector General report on the signal issue. Will you agree to that?
It doesn't bother me. I don't know. I want to find if there's any mistake or if a signal doesn't work. It could be that signal is not very good. It's a company. Maybe it's not very good. I think we'd rather know about it now. There was no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful that night, and it has been unbelievably successful every single night for the last 4 or 5 nights. So, and that's the thing that you should be talking about. This is something that should have been done by sleepy Joe Biden, but he was asleep at the wheel, other than when it came to stealing money, of course. Joe Biden should have done this attack on Yemen, which is basically a certain group within Yemen, the Houthis, and this should have been done by Joe Biden, and it wasn't, and that's caused this world a lot of damage and a lot of problems.
He's responsible, but he's also overseeing the investigation to find out what went wrong. Maybe
who's responsible?
Mike Waltz says that he's responsible.
Well, yeah, Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility, I would imagine. It had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike. But again, the attacks were unbelievably successul, and that's ultimately what you should be talking about, I think. No, Mike did. He took responsibility for it.
Should his position over this?
Say it?
Should Secretary Hegseth consider his position over the signal?
Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt. Here we are talking about some of the greatest business deals ever made. The greatest companies in the world are moving into the United States, and you want to ask about whether or not Signal works. I don't know that Signal works. I think Signal could be defective, to be honest with you. And I think that's what we have to, because you use Signal, and we use Signal, and everybody uses Signal, but it could be a defective platform, and we're going to have to find that out.
Mr. President, have you been briefed about soldiers in Lithuania?
Say it?
Have you been briefed about the soldiers in Lithuania who are missing?
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, have you spoken, sir, with the big 3 automakers about these tariffs? What was their reaction?
I have.
What was their reaction?
It depends on whether or not they have factories here. I can tell you, if they have factories here, they're thrilled. If you don't have factories here, they're going to have to get going and build them, because otherwise they have to pay tariffs. Very simple. And most of those have pretty big factories here, like General Motors has big factories here. They're going to move their parts divisions back to the United States, because some of them were made in Canada and some of them were made in Mexico and other places. They'll be moving their parts division back to the United States in factories where they may be at 60% capacity, so they don't even really have to build too much of a factory. But, generally speaking, if they have factories here, plants here, where they make their cars and equipment, but they make their cars here, they are thrilled. Same thing with the steel industry. Steel industry is now paying a 25% tariff, as you know, I put it on last week, and the business is roaring in the United States. And we can't, because of military, we can't lose the steel industry. If I didn't put the initial tariffs on steel in my first term, you wouldn't be able to have a military, because we wouldn't have. Every steel company would be bankrupt in the United States, and every plant would be closed. But now they're booming. And putting this tariff on, this additional tariff for steel and aluminum, it's making them thrive. And it's already happened.
Mr. President, coming up on the deadline for the TikTok sale, will you extend that deadline if you don't have a deal? Do you support Oracle?
Well, we will have a form of a deal. TikTok is very popular, very successful, very good. We're going to have a form of a deal, but if it's not finished, it's not a big deal. We'll just extend it. I have the right to have the deal and to extend it if I want. So we'll see whether or not we have a deal. We have a lot of interest in TikTok.
Is there a way for a U.S. company to operate it and ByteDance to still have a share of the algorithm?
Well, there are numerous ways you can buy TikTok, and we will find the one that's best for the country, for our country. I'm worried about our country more than anything else with respect to TikTok. And China is going to have to play a role in that, possibly, in the form of an approval, maybe. and I think they'll do that. Maybe I'll give them a little reduction in tariffs or something to get it done, you know, because every point in tariff is worth more money than TikTok. If you think every point, tariff is a much bigger world, and TikTok is big, but every point in tariffs is worth more than TikTok. So, in order to get China to do, maybe I'd give them a reduction in tariffs as an example. Sounds like something I'd do.
Do you think these tariffs are going to be good for Tesla, sir?
Good for who?
Tesla, which makes it.
Well, he is a fantastic Tesla. Will tariffs be good? I think they may. It could be a net neutral, or they may be good. He has a big plant in Texas. He has a big plant in California, and anybody that has plants in the United States, it's going to be good for, in my opinion.
Mr.
I
President, the
think
European
if you want
Union
to
has really
return
been.
education control to the states, how would you handle it if a state like California were to put in place education policy?
You know, I haven't seen a mask in so long. You're wearing a mask. So nice of you. I haven't seen anybody wearing a mask in a long time. It's good. You feel more comfortable, right?
Yes.
Good. That's good. So go ahead.
You said you want to return education control to the states. How would you handle it if a state like California were to put in place education policies you disagree with?
Well, I think that California is going to be tougher because they're doing badly on everything they do. You know, everything they touch turns bad. So a place like California would be tougher for education. But what I would see with California is you'd have a Los Angeles department, and you'd have Riverside. You'd go to various places. And I think you'd have some great areas in California, and then you'd have some, like everything else, it doesn't work so well. But ultimately, I think it would be very successful. I think in New York, as an example, you'd go to Long Island, Westchester, you may have Nassau County, Queens County. You break it up in certain ways so they'd have maybe 5 departments, because of the size, they'd have 5 departments instead of 1. A state like Iowa, you'd have 1. And, I mean, they're just chomping at the bit to get going. So many states are chomping at the bit to get education, and it's going to happen fast, to get the education